Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. Today we are in conversation with Aaron Anderson, where we will tackle tough questions such as who is Aaron Anderson? Why does he lift a camera? How are his amazing images so easily put together? Or are they? Aaron Anderson, I'm horrible. I need to work on my intros. I'm trying
It's
to spice
great.
things up, take us in this with the same energy we had in the green room. Didn't work, but we're here nonetheless. What's going on, man?
Oh, dude, not much. I thought it was a good intro. Well, I'm here for it.
7 out of 10? Room
Ah,
for improvement?
yeah, maybe six. Let's not
All
get
right.
too hasty.
Damn, tough critic. We're gonna return this when his images are on now.
Yeah.
Huge fan of your work, man, and even more of a fan of you as a person. Of course, good friend, great person, amazing photographer. And today, as we talked about, we're just gonna get inside your brain if you will let us, because your images are amazing. Your work just it really stands out, and we want to get to the heart of it. So, for those of you tuning in, if you don't know of his work, we're gonna drop his website and all that good stuff in the interwebs comments on YouTube there. So check out his Instagram, check out his website, get to know his work. And over the next course of this hour, we're going to get to know him, the person, the photographer, and all that. So, Aaron, I just want to get the conversation started with the good old fashioned cliche way. What's your origin story, man? How did you get involved in photography? What was it? Was it something you started as a child or something you got into later?
Yeah, dude, I've answered this question so many times. I try to keep it a little bit different, but it's not a great story. I started much later than most people do. I feel like everybody I talk to is like, yeah, I picked up this camera and tingles went down my arm, and then I took my first photo, and I've just been since I was 6.5 years old, I've been taking pictures, and I'm like, I took it in high school. I hated it so much that I didn't pick up a camera for another like 10 years. And that's
Wow.
literally so what happened was I bought my wife a camera for her birthday, and then promptly just like, oh, this is kind of fun, and then stole it. And that's what that was like my first camera was the
Your first
camera
camera was
that
stolen from your wife.
from my wife for her birthday. Um, and then I started playing with lighting, and I think that kind of pushed me over the edge to being like, oh man, this is something I enjoy. And then after that, actually talked to my wife again. And was like, hey, I enjoy this, but do people like actually do this for a living, or what am I supposed to do? And she's like, I don't know, but we could try. And so I actually applied to a school in Boston and got in, but then the housing situation and stuff wasn't working out. And while we were in San Francisco, I was with one of my mentors, just kind of like saying goodbye because we were moving to the East Coast. And he was like, "Hey, before you go, you should talk to my friend who works at the Academy of Art in San Francisco because it's just a cool place." And so I went in and toured the school and just was so pumped. I mean, I love San Francisco, but the school is just all over the city. And so you're just walking around the city, just like imbibing the vibes. And I remember calling my wife worked for the Olympic like cycling team at the time. So
Mhm.
she was like traveling around the world, and I called her and I was like, "Hey, I think we're moving to California." And she goes, "Okay, sweet." And so she met me and we went in, and then we ended up totally switching everything. I applied and got into there and then went to the Academy of Art. And that was, oh gosh, like 12 years ago now. Um, and since then, I got out of school and went straight into retouching because I just felt like there was a lack of understanding in the industry for what retouching does and what it is. And I felt like I needed that foundation before I kind of went into the big commercial photography realm. And it was hugely helpful. I was at a place called Sugar Digital for about a year and just learned so much about how these commercial images are actually made, which I think a lot of us don't understand, right? It's you see these big billboards and these things, and it's Nike and it's whatever, and you're like, holy smokes, I can't believe you got that in camera like that. And the real answer is they didn't get it in camera like that. There's somebody sitting behind a computer somewhere making it look that way. And so that was instrumental and monumental for my career moving forward. So now I do my own retouching, and when I work with commercial clients, I'm able to kind of take them from front to back with concepting, but then actually shooting and lighting the image and then taking it through post production and doing revisions and things like that, where my fingerprints are on anything that comes out of, well, call it my studio. But it's yeah, that's the short version. I stole a camera. I don't feel good about it, but I did. And
Well, look, I mean, if it got you here
yeah,
and
true.
the world would have never known your work without it, I think we can get you a pardon or something
That
on that.
I gave it back. If we could just, I bought another camera. She got her old camera back. So,
I think the camera gods will forgive you. Dude, I didn't
yeah.
even know all our conversations we have. I mean, we probably never talk about our origin stories when we hang.
In normal life.
Yeah, right? Exactly. We don't talk about that in normal life, but it's like I never knew like the retouching side of things. I never knew. I mean, it's kind of like you took like the backwards approach to how most people do, where most people it's like, oh, I pick up a camera, I love it, I'm doing all this stuff, and here you are like, no, I want to see like reverse engineer how the magic like take the billboard down, bring it into studio, and like go like that process in reverse, which I think is kind of cool because it shows in your work now looking at it makes a lot more sense. And it also shows why there's a lot of bad work out there because a lot more people should understand retouching and retouching is a fine art.
Yeah.
Post processing is a fine art. I think that's
Yep.
where a lot of images go to die.
Hmm.
You have a lot of great potential that goes,
Yes.
yeah.
Or even some, I mean, there is definitely images that will come in for $500,000 campaigns that we have to save.
Wow.
And it's like you're coming in where they're overexposed, we're painting skin, we're putting in skies, we're trimming out hedges, we're putting in bushes. Like that is so common. It's kind of, I think more people should know about it because it's like,
Interesting.
oh, I when I think of these people, the pictures coming out of camera, when I first started and I look at Vogue or I look at, any of these things that inspire me, I just thought, "Psh, they are just really freaking good. But they're good. Don't get me wrong. I'm
Mhm.
not saying they're not good. But the people behind them, the people supporting them, their teams, that is what really makes them. I mean, I know we had specific recipes for specific photographers for coloring, for how we would dodge and burn or whatever. Or even this goes back as far as like I saw a documentary a while back about Ansel Adams. We'll call him a retoucher, but he did all the processing in the darkroom and everything. And they showed a picture of Ansel Adams' notes, and it
Mm.
was like unreal. I don't know if you've seen that. And it's just
Yeah.
like everything circled and sketched. And so this dude's in there, dodging and burning his life away. And it's
He's
like
the original Photoshop
yeah,
god.
that's OG retoucher right
Yeah.
there. That's what it is. Like that's Photoshop point five.
So there, first point of the interview that I'm going to take with me is I can be a commercial photographer.
Dude.
No longer have to have imposter
Yeah.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Anybody could do this with a great team behind them.
Oh, dude, that is 100% commercial photography. It's a team of people. And if you think you're gonna walk into that world by yourself, yep, you've already lost. Like that's just not how it works.
Interesting. Do you think that's helped you in the way you approach things as far as because I know for me personally, I critique a lot of images. I do a lot of photo critiques. And
Mhm.
as I look through other people's work, I see things that I would never do in my own work, but that I
Mm.
like. And
Okay.
I think I just put a filter on because when it's me, I'm like, nah. But then I see somebody else do it. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should try that. And I also see a lot of stuff that just isn't done right. And I notice it. And because I notice it, then looking back at somebody else's work, and even when I look at my own work, I'm able to, the next time I go out and I'm in that situation, okay, I remember this. Look, pay attention to my edges. I kind of clean up my
Mm.
pre-process by looking at what has been done, the final product. Do you
Yeah.
take what you learned as a retoucher and what you do on an everyday basis to say, okay, how can I get this right in camera? How can I, okay, what are the things that I would go back and retouch? Do you kind of take a backwards forward approach to that, to photographing?
Yeah. I mean, I think once you've done retouching long enough, you're definitely looking for certain things. And I always like to say I want to get it 90% of the way in camera, unless I'm shooting a composite, then obviously that's a totally different story. But I'd like to get it 90% or 80%, 80 to 90% there in camera. And then the rest of it, like the magic, the finishing touches, that's going to happen in post-production. But what I need to know is that all of the ingredients are there when it comes into my computer. So I think sometimes, even like in school, they'll teach you like shoot to the right. right? Which you're going to kind of expose to the brighter side of things. And I actually disagree with that. And almost everything that I've seen come through, if they tend to expose to the right, there's some things that are much harder to bring back. Whereas if you expose to the left a little bit, and I'm not saying like, boy, this makes me sound super geeky. I'm trying to make this sound cooler than it is. But if you expose to the left where it's darker, as long as you're not clipped, as long as those blacks aren't gone, there
Mhm.
is, it's much juicier to bring that up than to have this, I'll call it overexposed type image and try to bring it down. I found, especially in Photoshop, it makes it easier to apply a good color grade when it's a little bit more flat and under than if it's like super bright and almost over. So yeah, I mean, it's seeing all these different things. And then it also comes down to, I feel like a lot of people coming into the space of commercial photography don't understand this idea of teams and this idea that being able to speak the language of a retoucher is important. So, like, if you are going to send your work off to a retoucher, which I have done, just depending upon what the job is, or if you know hair and makeup artists, if you know the producers and all these different things, you need to know all these things before you start bidding jobs and before you step on any kind of commercial set. And a lot of times, I think we kind of put this persona out there like we're this one-man show that just operates on their own thing. But in all reality, without the people that are around me, like for instance, one of the things that you were saying that kind of popped this into my mind, my digital tech who is on set with me on any of these bigger jobs, like he's checking my focus, he's checking my exposures, he's checking my, they call me, one of my techs calls me Dutch because I tend to kind of like get, when I get into it, I was like, so he
Is
was
it
calling me,
intentional or are you
no,
just
totally not intentional.
so you're
But he
like
was
me?
call
Your internal level is way off.
way off. I'm imbalanced. I have an imbalance. But he started calling me Dutch because he was just like, Dutch, you're Dutch. And I'm like, wait, are you calling me that or am I actually? He's like, no, you're actually super tilted. He's like, I thought you were doing it on purpose, but I think I'm figuring out you're not. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. But
For a
that's the
while,
whole,
you were in trend though. When that Dutch
yeah,
angle was in, it's
it
like
was,
you were rolling.
I missed it. So yeah, I think that for me is a really important. My friend Scott, when I was in school, he treated every shoot like it was this big production, and I learned so much just from him because he came in from having already shot with like Esquire magazine and stuff and coming into this program, and he would every set, and these are school projects. We'd have hair, makeup, first assistant,
Wow.
second assistants. I mean, it was, and models from agencies, like it was insane. And I took that. And so that's the kind of thing I think I look at. And to answer your question in a roundabout way, is I'm looking at how they're functioning as a photographer. And it's like, man, that's incredible. This is, and that's what I love about photography is this kind of like group collaboration where we all have this vision and it just comes together and then we create something as a team as opposed to, and I'll do it by myself, but it's just not as fun to me. That's why I don't do a lot of still
Interesting.
life photography. You know, it's like,
That's great. I mean, it requires you to pocket the ego. I think a lot of people, ego's big, especially in art. And it's like everybody wants
mm,
that credit. Everybody wants their name on the marquee. And to sideline your ego in favor of combining forces, because everybody on a team, everybody has their task. And if everybody does their task, plays their role, everything comes together nicely. And you do you work with the same people over and over? Do you find yourself bringing in, or is it really just the same general team? Oh, your mic cut out on us.
I tried to stay with the same team. Sorry.
There we go.
I was swallowing water and I didn't want you guys to experience. Uh,
How
I tried to stay with the
courteous.
same team. I'm a kind of a loyalist,
Okay.
but it depends, right? I mean, if we end up on a job in Wisconsin or something and I don't have somebody or we need to find somebody, we can, depending on budgets. But usually I would try to fly somebody in. Or at least if I'm working someplace regularly, I'll try to have a core kind of group that I'll pull from first. And then I'll take recommendations from them if I can't find, they're not available for some reason. Because a lot of them are really busy, or at least I
Mhm,
hope they are. You know, it's, you want them to stay busy. So
mhm. I mean, now all this makes sense if you're like one city, you have an apartment in New York, you have a home in LA, you're all over the place.
Mhm.
And like when you're going over your origin story, I'm like, this guy's always been traveling. You've always been all over. Whereas me, it's just like my one, two places. That's it. I don't get
Yeah.
out much. How does this, I mean, have you always been, is this just a lifestyle you're accustomed to? Is that where you're comfortable? And how the hell do you function, especially in like a commercial capacity and having a team?
Yeah.
Like, are you just constantly on the road? Like, how does this work, man?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we should tell the kind people of the interwebs that I do actually travel full time now. We've been traveling full time as a family of five for over 4 years now, which is kind of
Wow.
crazy. So we sold our house back right before the pandemic in 2020 and bought a fifth wheel, a big old RV, which I pull with like this big F450. We just kind of went for it. We just said, you know what, it was getting a little too grindy. It just wasn't, I was working 100 hours a week and
Mm,
it just wasn't the life we wanted. And so again, my wife, I mean, I want to speak so highly of my wife. I think it's like without her support on this journey and her just like even that question of I don't know, but we can certainly try has been the catalyst for so many things because of that belief and because of her ability to just say, I'm willing to risk if you're willing to risk. And so in some ways, yeah, it's exhausting because it's you're constantly risking, you're constantly moving, you're constantly on the road. So I don't want to glamorize that. But on the flip side of that, we're taking our three kiddos and we're driving all over the country, you know, and they get to see and meet people that they wouldn't otherwise. And we get to see things and do things and try food that I wouldn't get to do otherwise. And I think for me, I it took me a minute to realize this, but when I was younger, I felt like my parents were a little more strict and I didn't I wasn't as free as I would want to be.
mhm.
But I think my rebellion came in the form of like I am going. I don't need like drugs and alcohol, whatever, but I want to experience food and people and places and it's kind of my happy place when I'm in those spaces. So since I left the house, which was young, like I was 18, I immediately was like, I'm done. I need to be out on the road just doing stuff. I moved to Pennsylvania, and then I was going to move to Florida, but then ended up moving back to Colorado. Then I got married really young. So we got married when we were 20. And then we moved to California. I became a scuba diving instructor in Colorado. And then I've done like 20 different jobs ranging from like, you know, maintenance at a camp to uh, managing a scuba diving store in Colorado. And all that life experience has always kind of been this idea of where can I go to experience people and places and then take those together and experience it with people. And photography has been the catalyst for me of this kind of like crescendo, I guess, if you will. Or it's like I can take, we get good food on set. I get to usually get to travel, so I'm going to try something else. I get to interact with people and work with people that I love. And then I get to work with clients and collaborate and create. And it's just a fun, I mean, you and I, like, we went right in New York. So, and then
Yeah.
we saw each other in Kentucky. And that's the random stuff that this industry, I think I love that we get to go see these places and experience. And after, like, in Kentucky, even, I took a day to just wander around and I tried like a Cuban sandwich and I tried the brown, whatever that brown gravy sandwich was that they have. The hot brown, I think
You
it's
should have
called.
put me on, man.
Dude,
I was scraping the bottom of the barrel on 2-star YouTube or Google
oh, dude,
reviews.
it was great. It was great.
Wow.
But I found out, so like this is, I'm sorry, this is way off topic. However, when I was in my Uber going to Kentucky, he was from Cuba, my driver. And he was like, this is the second largest population of Cuban immigrants that are in the country. And I was like, in
Wow.
Louisville, Kentucky? He's like, yeah. And I was like, wow, dude, that's crazy. And so first was Miami, second is Louisville. And so that kind of I was like, I should go find Cuban food. And so sure enough, I look, and they're all over. And then I found this Cuban restaurant, and it was the best was like some of the best food I've ever had in my life. And I walked like 3 miles across the city and sat down and had Cuban food by myself. And it was great. Like it was such an experience. And that all comes from photography. So for me, it's like I'm really using photography just to keep my passions of meeting people and experiencing things alive, I guess is kind of what I
That's
do.
all. No, that's awesome. I mean, that's exactly what it should be. It should enrich your life the same way that your life should enrich your photography. I'm a little disappointed you didn't put me onto that Cuban thing while we were in Kentucky.
You
Um,
left. You were gone by the time I went. I
yeah,
went
there was
like the next day. You guys
short
left
trip,
early. Yeah.
short trip. And if I would have known, dude, I would have made this like a 20-part interview series. I'm like, I have to get through each of your personalities and each of your
Sorry,
guys lived like 20 lives already.
dude.
We
Schizo.
we only have one out. I'm like, I might have to stretch this out a little bit. But no, I mean that is great. How come like how come you've never branched out into like, dude, I would love to see like street photography, even on like a personal level. Maybe it's because I'm a street photographer, but I think the way you see, the way you travel, you interact. I mean, just that story about, most people, I was just talking with people yesterday. It's like, I don't want my Uber driver to talk. I just want to sit in the back and fall asleep or be quiet and listen to the headphones. But I think that's so cool that like you generally have a zest for life and for people. But I think maybe it's because you got into photography later and you kind of already knew what you wanted to do. Like most people go through that path of like, I'm going to shoot flowers and then I'm going to shoot headshots and then I'm going to, it's like takes this progression. You go through the trends, you get a lens ball and
Yeah.
you go through the
Yeah.
Instagram trends.
Yeah.
So is it because, you got on the horse later in life and you were like, I know what I want to do. This is where my passion is. And I feel like you took like the straight path where a lot of people take like a roundabout path through the woods.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think one of the things that you realize is like when I was in school and I'm, 27 and the kids I'm with are 17, 18 years old, and you're like, oh my gosh, you seem so young to me now. Uh, you understand it. I mean, I remember that age. I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. Like I changed majors. I went to different colleges. I dropped out of 3 different colleges. Like it's so confusing to try and jump out when you're 18 and figure out what you want to do. And I think for me, the baseline thing that I always knew was that I wanted to be with people and I wanted to hear about them. I wanted to know them. I wanted them to feel seen and feel loved. And I struggled to find a career that allowed you that type of interaction. I remember the first thing I ever tried was landscape architecture. Because in my head, I was like, I'm going to sit in people's living rooms. We're going to talk about their backyards. And then we're just going to be like, oh, that a Japanese maple looks so good right there. And I'll be like, yes. And I'll just like draw a which I suck at drawing. But I mean, those little tree things that you just kind of
Yeah.
like, um, and I went to school and they were like, all right, we're going to take CAD 1, CAD 2, CAD 3, and then you're going to learn this botany class, that botany class. And I was like, I think maybe I've made a huge mistake. And I was at Temple University. I ended up dropping all of my classes. I got certified in aquatic safety, which is basically
This is
like
so random.
CPR. This was like lifeguard training basically in college. Uh, I missed out on the weight training class. Apparently it was full, but so it's like that was where I started. I went to college and was like, oh crap, this is not good. I don't want to do this. And so I've been seeking that thing of like, how do I spend time with people? And now, I mean, this is kind of a good segue, I guess. But like whenever I do personal projects, it's part of my, we'll call them requirements, that I get to sit down and talk with that person. Like I would love usually at coffee, which is like another love language of mine. But usually we get to sit down for like 2 to 3 hours and I just get to hear their story and we just drink coffee. And then the projects are born from that conversation. So it's like, I know I want to work with you, but let's sit together and talk and see what comes out of it and what we can create to really give your story justice. Um, so that's kind of like me saying, hey, I love coffee and people, and I'll take your picture too. Like
I love that.
that's fine. So that's just been my journey, I think, has pushed me to a place where I'm like, I'm always trying to say, like, how do I spend time with people? How do I love them? How do I engage in their story? And photography has been such a great catalyst for that thing, for me to just say, like, hey, you're seen and you're heard, and we're going to show people your story so that you can feel loved and share that with the world, and hopefully in a positive way help them either grow and gain a following or get a sponsorship or you name it, kind of vibe. So it's been really cool in that way, and have been blessed to work with like so many cool people over the years, and a lot of them with personal projects.
That's awesome. So are you taking personal projects full time? Do you ever, do you always have something on the burner, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always doing personal projects, and I'm always reaching out and trying to get something set up. I think just for, again, it's feeding that, let's get coffee, let me hear your story, and let's figure it out. Last one, we actually got ramen and it was fantastic, and just now we're working on that story. But dude, yeah, it's been so fun. And because I was originally in Colorado Springs, the Olympic Training Center is there. And
Mm,
so I started this looking for Olympic athletes and found that not only do they have amazing stories, I mean, incredible stories. These people are some of like the most hardworking, dream-born type people you'll ever meet in your life, but they need photos desperately because they don't have access to the things that you would think an Olympic athlete would have. And I've been shocked at, like, honestly how poorly they're treated, especially in our country, to be like,
mhm.
you're the elite, but yet either A, nobody knows about you and you're working at Home Depot or whatever
Yeah.
on the side just to keep this dream going so that you can go to the Olympics every 4 years and maybe even compete. And even then, like, I'll sit down to at the table with a gold medalist and they'll walk in and not a person in that room knows,
Wow.
like, that person is the best in the world at what they do and nobody knows. Like,
It's insane, right?
it's weird
Like
to me.
unless it's one of like the big, like, basketball
Right, right.
and even a lot of the sports, with the exception of basketball, like basketball is really the one big sport where it's big in the Olympics and it's just big all over the world
Yeah.
outside the Olympics because of the NBA. But I mean, other big sports here that are big in the United States aren't big Olympic sports, and
Mhm.
then big Olympic sports aren't professionally popular in the
Yeah.
NBA. So it's like I feel like there's like this big disconnect. And like you said, I mean, I've always thought it was one of the coolest things in the world to be able to get the tattoo of the rings
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
Olympics, because it's like I did that. I'm one of the best at what I do.
Yeah.
The fact that they only compete every 4 years, it's like you look at the lifespan of, when you're in your prime for some of these sports is so short, and then you divide it up by 4 years and it's like it's even shorter. So
Oh yeah,
it's kind of wild. Yeah, like you
it is.
photographed an Olympic champion. We'll drop the website again, so you guys can see that picture. It wasn't safe to roll on the family program just for other reasons. But no,
Family.
it's not a bad picture. But modest program here. But it's such an amazing image. I've always loved that deconstructed look where you kind of get to see the whole scene. You have the backdrop there. It's in the desert, even just the dirt kicking off the ground. How did that photo come about? Because that's one of my personal favorites of yours, because it has everything. I think it's like the ultimate image that shows perfect precision. It also shows restraint and also just throwing it all out there and going for it.
Yeah, and thank you, first of all, but that was a personal project. So that was Jade Stepter, the photo you're talking about, which you guys will not get to see unless you go to my website. Um,
Drop
www.andersonvisuals.com. Um, it, that the reason behind that location is because her story started in Arizona in the desert. And so her training and her path and her story is amazing. Like, there's more images in that series. Like, her mom was an Olympic hurdler and was her Olympic coach going into that Olympic year, which is just insane. So we were able to, like, take in images of them together. showing just this bond of like a mom who has been so strong and amazing, and then now her daughter is doing the same thing. And those were kind of based around the idea of a shoot that Annie Leibovitz did with Allison Felix. And that was like another nod because Allison Felix is like one of her role models, both as like just an incredible woman athlete and also a mom and all these different things. And so we kind of played off of pieces from that shoot to create this shoot. And then you fast forward 6 months later, I think it was 6 months. I don't know exact time frame. She's on the world championship team running with Allison Felix, winning a gold medal at the world championships. And that was
Wow.
so cool to see that story unfold because here she is working part-time as actually I think she's working full-time as a graphic designer at Ruggable, and then she's grinding. I mean, she's working so hard, right? You're 4 years and they are training day in and day out. They're going to work full-time and doing all of these different things. And it's to me, it's incomprehensible how they do all the stuff they do and the shape that these people are in. I mean, we did another one with a track runner, and I was doing a little bit of video on like a gimbal, and I was like trying to keep up, and I was like, "Could you slow down a little?" She's like, I won't be running anymore." And I'm like, "No, you'll be running. I can't even come close to you." I'm like sprinting at full capacity. But it's incredible. I think I have a lot of respect. I grew up playing soccer for the first like 17 years of my life and played at high levels. And so I appreciate I appreciate the athleticism. I appreciate the work and the commitment that it takes. And again, there's just so many stories like that that I've been so stoked to be able to tell. And Jade and I met on another set for a commercial project. And then we just stayed in touch. And I was like, "Hey, let me hear your story and let's see what happens." That we had to do over a Zoom call because it was right in the middle of the pandemic.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're still in touch. She's expecting her first kiddo. And so it's fun. Like I'm not just clickety clickety. Like I get to engage. I get to be a part of the story, which I really appreciate. It's like that's why I'm here. I'm not I don't I yeah, I like clicking buttons as much as the next dude, but I really enjoy being a part of the story.
I love that. And we've mentioned kiddos a couple times. Of course, we're parents.
Yep.
That shapes your life. Once the kids come into your life, it takes over in some regards. But I feel like I was actually just thinking about it this morning as I was, sitting down and preparing for this interview. I'm thinking about like, you know, he's dominated the way I function as a photographer. Like
Mm,
what I take pictures of, the pictures that I really find myself gravitating towards, the moments as a father, going out where he's got his little point and shoot right next to me and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about being a father, balancing those roles and how one has played into the other? And I know, there's another project, probably my absolute favorite project of yours. You already know where I'm going with this. So talk about being a father,
yeah.
being a father photographer. You got me tongue tied over here.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, my favorite project.
Yeah, I it shapes everything we do, right? I mean that it changes your life. And I think right now, one of the things I'm so grateful for with RVing is that it allows me a lot of time. Like I was joking with you before we hopped on, like I'm literally sitting in a teeny tiny RV bedroom and my knees are on my dresser and this is my desk. This is my full-time desk. I mounted a monitor to the wall and I come in
This is why
here.
we do it.
It's right. I'm 6 feet away from my family. Like when they're here, I think they're still out, but I just go outside. I go out for lunch every day. I see them all day. I mean, they're homeschooled, obviously, because we're on the road. And it is so grounding as a human being. You were talking a lot about ego. I think it's so good. It's so good to have kids because especially like when I'm in LA and I'll go in and I'll be on set and like I'll go to a Hollywood backlot studio, be shooting like let's just say like Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne, okay? And then I'm there all day. We're shooting for big brands, we're shooting with celebrities, and then I come home. And what really matters is, did you get home in time to put your kids to bed? And that is what they care about. It's like, what time is daddy coming home? And it's like that. And I sit down and they're like, how was your day? Good. Awesome. We made these things, and they show me, and then we're off and running. Do you have energy to play wiffle ball or whatever? Which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I think engaging in those moments, and my kids now are 6, 8, and 10, and knowing that like so much of their, like my 6-year-old was 2 when we got into the RV, which is insane. He doesn't even remember what it's like to live in a house.
Wow.
Um, but knowing that we've invested this time in their younger lives has been really, really important. And it can be really hard because a lot, a lot of the people I compare myself to, and a lot of the people that I look up to, or, am trying to like, kind of gauge my career around, they don't have kids, or they don't want kids, or, there's different avenues, obviously, different strokes, different folks. But for me, I'm like always trying to figure out, okay, I, I I'm not willing to sacrifice this, but I'm willing to sacrifice this. So it's like, how do I balance between not sacrificing my family, but still making it in a career that's very, very cutthroat and very, very kind of savage,
Yeah.
Um, and we've kind of taken this approach of like the slow burn. It's like, okay, my career might build a little slower than some, and that's okay. But I'm going to spend time with my kids right now. And then as they get a little bit older and it's a little bit easier for me to be away more, I jokingly call it reverse retirement, where I kind of, I'm traveling, I'm with my family, we're running around, we're doing stuff. And then when I get a little bit older and my kids are a little bit older, then I'll be like, okay, I'm kicking into high gear. I need to pay for your school now. So I didn't do that earlier. Now I'm going to do that. So that's, I mean, and it's never, there's no perfect path, right? I just, for me, I want to just drink in as much as I can with them now, because there's so much formation going on. You can attest to this. There's just so much formation, and they're holding the camera like you. I have this picture that my wife took of my son holding the camera. He's like 2.5, and he's holding it backwards, but he's holding it like me,
I
and
love
he's
it.
crouched down and he's got his stance, and he doesn't even know what he's doing. And I just found those photos um, on a random memory card that was just floating around. And it's just like pictures of his face because he was pointing the camera the wrong way. And
Yeah,
it's so cool that
I
we
love that.
can be a part of that and be a part of their journey. So that's I mean, our number one priority right now is our family and our kids. And um, then I get to go out and tell stories, and then they see people like Jade, and my daughter can look up to someone like that, and we can watch them on the Olympics, and we could say, "Go, Miss Jade!" Yeah, like we love Miss Jade, like we know who she is, and we can look at the photos or whatever, and it's kind of a fun way to bring them into that world as well, and have really cool people surrounding them. Like my son got to meet Robbie Madison, which is amazing. I mean, he's an iconic freestyle motocross athlete, and we got to go to his house, and he got to see him and his motorcycles and all this cool stuff. And it's like, that's pretty cool. That's stuff I won't be able to do again when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. And so, yeah, that's my gushy, mushy side, I
That's
guess.
awesome. It all resonates completely because it's like, dude, you hit the nail on the head. And I often wonder if I'm the only one that thinks it's something. I literally just said it to my wife today. It's like, do I go out, and when I go out running on Mondays, it's like
Mm,
that means I am not back by the time my son's in bed. And you start
mhm.
to prioritize like that 2 hours that I'll
Yeah.
get with my son and the time that I pick him up and the time he goes to bed. It's like that's gold. Like
Yeah.
you can't replace that. You don't get that time back, and we know how quick it goes. Like that really
Yeah.
just that time flies, and you don't get it back. So I want to dive in now because I was going to talk about your style, but I'm like, what better way to do that than to get some images on the screen?
Let's go.
So we're going to pull some images up on the screen. I love your style, man. I told you I was going to sit here and just fanboy for an hour. So I've managed to get through the first 41 minutes without fanboying, which I think
Yes.
is pretty good.
That's great.
So we're just going to talk through some of these images. I just want to know. I mean, dude, it's so good. It's like technically perfect, but it's not dry and boring. Like most people, they go technically perfect, and it's like it has no character, no personality. So, talk me through some of these images.
Yeah. So this one actually, and this is what I'm talking about. This image only happened um because of his story. And so this is Ralph Hugging, which is he was on RMD Garage. He's like a reality TV show star. And this shoot was for Gorin Brothers, which is the hat that he's wearing. And I actually approached Gorin with this idea for this project. We called it the Artisan Project, where we would meet different artisans who wear Gorin as it's super weird to say this, but it's like an identity thing. So I was gonna wear my Gorin today, but I am wearing over-ear headphones, so I can't do that. But I'm looking at the wall right now because I have three of them hanging right here next to my screen. Um, and the idea was like it creates this almost security blanket that we wear and is a part of who we are and a part of creating and being on set. And I'm semi known for wearing a fedora on set. But we went to RMD Garage, which is this beautiful facility down in Long Beach where they do custom cars. And we talked for like an hour and he was telling me his story, which is incredible. He started a mobile detailing, which RMD stands for Ralph's Mobile Detailing, which is so cool
That's
because when
awesome.
he was like, I think he was like 16 years old. I have my notes, but he was like 16 years old, started this. Yeah, it came from a huge Mexican family. They lived in like a one-bedroom apartment with like 8 people in the apartment, and it was just he was just trying to make it, you know. Fast forward, he's living in this house that he helped design and remodel in just outside of Long Beach. And while we were talking, he's going through this story. He was like, I would love it if you'd come to my house and just look at it because I'm really proud of it, like where I've come from and and I helped design it and all these different things. And I was like, dude, if you would be willing to let me come into your home, I would love that. So we ended up going. I went there and then I drove over to his house and he just walked me around and told me like the things he had designed, all this different stuff. And that's where this is. This is he has this bar because he loves entertaining. He loves having people over, and it was just like, I need to shoot this. This is incredible. And so one of the things I like to say, like my niche is lighting. Like I love lighting and I love the way it all comes together. But like images like this for me, it's all strobe. So there's no natural light in this photo. And that,
Interesting.
like, I love that. It's because from a client perspective, I could shoot this image for you for as long as you want. I don't need to wait for golden hour. I don't need to wait for a sunset. I don't need to wait for the right light. I could shoot it in the middle of the night. I could shoot it in the middle of the day, whatever you need me to do. And learning that, I'm like, I don't think of myself as a like nerded out type person, but like I love that. Like one of the best compliments I've ever gotten was from a client who said, hey, if you don't, we've only got about 20 minutes left of golden hour. And I just looked at him and I said, there is no sun in that photo. So you have as many hours of golden hour as you want. And we shot for 3 hours in that lighting. And so that has always been I get made fun of sometimes for how much I stare at sunsets and things. And that has always been my mind of like, I want to deconstruct this and then create it artificially. And that's where this type of setup comes from. It's like, okay, I have foreground pillows. I have two huge lights coming in. I need a little bit of light spilling on those. I'm going to need a strip box. And so I'm just like, how can I create a feeling of, I don't want you paying attention to that. I know that, but I don't want you to pay attention to that because it's not about lighting. It's about him. Right. So it just kind of all comes to that point where I just get so excited about these stories and I want to go in and I want to make it as beautiful as possible. I want to make it the way that I see it in my mind. And that took so long. I mean, it's like so funny because when I first started, they were just awful. You know, you're like, you get on set and you're like, this is going to be so cool. And you got all this stuff and you put it all up and you get back to your computer and you're like, man, I'm not even 40% of the way there. I can't even save this photo. It's so bad. And so it's all this trial and error and learning your tools. But that's the not so quick version of why
How many
that
lights do
image
you
is.
usually use? I'm curious on a given shoot. Is there like an average amount or for your like your go-to setup? It's all over the place.
All over the place. Yeah, a lot of people ask me like, "What's your go-to lighting setup?" I definitely don't have one. I'm all about
Interesting.
situational lighting. So if you think about it more from like if I'm learning lighting, I typically am learning from a cinematography perspective as opposed to a photo perspective. I think one of the things photographers in general kind of get messed up with is this recipe. Like, I think there are techniques that are useful, but this whole like 45, 45 or whatever, it's like that's good sometimes and for like a really specific portrait. But a lot of times I want the room to look like a room. I don't want you
Mm,
to be like lost in the lighting on him. Like I don't want you to know that I think there's 7 strobes firing in this photo. Like I don't
ah,
want you to know that. I want you to look at the image. Like that's the whole point. If you use these leading lines to draw back to his face and we, do these different things that I can actually tell the story as opposed to being like, oh, I'm going to deconstruct this lighting. It's like, I mean, when I'm watching Joker, I can't deconstruct the lighting. It's just gorgeous, right?
yeah.
You're just watching Joker and it's like,
It's
holy
supposed to not even
smokes.
be a thing. Like this, like
Exactly.
I look at it and it's like, I'm glad you went into all that because when I look at it, it's like, oh, there's a window right there. It's just that perfect light.
It's it's window light. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is you shouldn't notice there's different color coming from this side of the frame because one side would be cooler because one's shade driven, one's sun driven. Like those things are super important. So
Mm,
I have gels on lights. I have all these different things, but it usually isn't just for the sake of having gels. I mean, sometimes it is like this light
mm,
over here. But it's usually for a purpose. It's like, why would a light be blue? Well, a light would be blue because it's blue hour or that's a daylight and we have tungsten bulbs in the house or whatever it is. And so it's like, how are we trying to make this feel? How are we trying to make this look? And so we're making decisions based on the story as opposed to based on the lighting. It's like I'm not going to make a whole shoot because of a lighting. I'm going to make a shoot because of a story. So that's kind of how I drive my images typically.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
I,
Like,
I, that same this is
look
the
at
same
this,
guy.
dude.
Same thing. And it is all are still artificial. Still artificial lighting.
The way you see the reflections, like there's no, how many lights are on this one?
It was
Same.
similar. It was a similar
Okay.
setup because we just started moving backwards in the house. So the frame here, if looking straight ahead of him is the actual bar that he was at. So I just
Mhm.
moved outside and I moved my lights, but obviously we're dealing with reflections.
It's just the
And
same
so,
day, same set, like same session.
oh, it's within 20 minutes of each other.
It two completely different but equally stunning looks. Dude,
Yeah,
that's
and
wild.
that's the that's it. And there might have been a little reflection, but I'll like that kind of Photoshop stuff. I'll just Photoshop it out or whatever. But I'm more looking at like gradients and leading lines and how we can push lighting in and how does it feel natural. And
The color grading too, like it's perfect. It gives it such a nice mood.
oh, this was a fun one.
This is awesome.
This just actually we just did this one not too long ago. This was with she's Jordan Halverson is from a show on Netflix called How to Be a Cowboy, and I found her, met her on Instagram, and reached out and she's out in the, like the middle of nowhere, Texas, on this awesome ranch. And she's a bull rider, like this super talented bull rider. And I pitched this idea and was like, hey, I want to do this like super lit, like get in there and really get after lighting on a bull and stuff. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we ended up this light, this is oh man, in the stadium we had I'm trying to count. I think we had 8 to 10 lights. And the idea was, I was like, I want it to feel like a stadium, and we're gonna wait till it gets a little bit darker, and then we're just gonna blast lights from all over the place and create this super cinematic kind of crazy vibe. It took us a long time to set up all this stuff. We have a huge octabox over top of her on a boom arm, and then we have 2 lights flaring in, and then we have 3 lights on either side for the stadium, and then I have a giant like 75 for Phil coming in through the bars, and um, yeah, it was so fun. and scary at the same time. I was like right in this bull's face, and it was just, yeah, it's incredible to see her just strap in and go. It was insane. And then I have other images, but it's like when I actually got to go in the ring while she was riding and shoot with these lights going. And oh man, it was. And again, that's like, if I'm being real with you, like I don't really care if I get to take a picture of that. If I just get to stand in there and I get to be there and see it, I'm pretty pumped about it. And so photography just came as like well, if I took a picture of this, it'd be cool. So I'll do that. And maybe someone will pay me and I could go do it some more.
And then you get an awesome picture, and it's like it's such a great memory when you have an awesome picture of it.
Dude, I love this. This one, this was part of the reason why I wanted to shoot with her is I had this idea, kind of that going back to that Jade Steptoe
Yeah.
shoot, which is kind of a similar vibe. And this is a composite because it would
I
have
was all
been,
right. I was gonna ask.
yeah, it's a composite because it would have been super dangerous. Although what we did was super dangerous anyways. Um, so we took her image separately. And I had in this one, we have like this is actually a one light setup where I balanced it with ambient. And my assistant's down behind the background because it was super windy. He's like sprawled out with his hands out, holding the
Okay.
background down. And then yeah, he was shout out to Zion because he was a trooper, man. Then I told Jordan, I was like, I really want like a bull, like right there, like, I want to light him though. So like, can we do that? And she's like, yeah, I mean, I'll just brought him out into the ring. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so I put Zion, my assistant, on a 53-inch Octa on a boom arm, like mobile. He's got
Oh, wow.
he's got his Ellen Chrome pack over his shoulder, and he's on a boom arm. I was like, when the bull comes out, just like get as close as you can and try to match the angle, like just keep it really feathered. And I was like yelling, feathered, feathered, and he's like friggin' bullfighting this thing with the Octabox. And then we got that. So I was like super pumped. And that was the story of that one.
And
It was so fun.
Zion quit the next day.
Zion was so pumped, dude. He was like, "This is a dream of mine." He's like, "I've
Awesome.
always wanted to work and like see bull riding and stuff." I'm like, "Well, you get a front row seat, man. You've been in the ring, my friend." Dude, this is Kevin Staub. Like, I met this guy through like a friend of a friend. This is like Tony Hawk's right hand man, which is
Oh, no
super
way.
fun. And he is a legend, and he is such a cool guy. And we went to coffee at Starbucks, and like we were in not was it Costa Mesa or Carlsbad or something. Dude shows up, he's wearing like leopard print purple pants, and you're like, oh my gosh, the guy is a legend, and he's just the nicest dude. So we sit down, we talked for like an hour and a half, and while we were talking, sometimes I'll have these ideas in my head, and I'll like, I'm hesitant, but I'll just blurt it out. And I was just like, dude, I don't know why, but I keep seeing the Wizard of Oz for you, dude, because this like top hat stuff and he's like, what did you just say? I was like, oh shoot, I said that. I shouldn't have said that. And I was like, like the Wizard of Oz, like kind of sheepishly. And he was like, my logo is based around the Wizard of Oz.
Ah,
I was like, dude, we have to do this. And so I ended up like painting a yellow brick road and finding this wild studio in Los Angeles. And he came in and with all this just amazing, like these hand painted jackets and top hats and leopard pants and all these different things. And we shot for a day. And yeah, it was crazy. It was just such a cool experience just to even meet him, but then to be allowed to do something like this with someone who is basically a celebrity is pretty cool, like very fun.
how do you? I'm interested because that whole conversation on lighting, I think, is so cool. I think that's the first time I've ever heard a still photographer take that approach to it. Where it's like, yeah, there's certain things, certain techniques that, yeah, they work sometimes, but I think what we find with so many photographers is they develop a style and they generally have the same look over and over and over. I mean, I can go through your catalog and it's like, I know it's you. it has you written all over it, but it's different lighting schemes. And now it makes a lot more sense, obviously, because it's like you don't have a go-to. You kind of take each one as a one-off.
Yeah.
How do you dig through your mind and through your, bank of ideas and lighting schemes to know like when, like, okay, you see this person, I'm a street photographer, so it's like if I see somebody standing in light like this, or silhouetted, it's like, okay, boom, everything is taken care of. I don't think I would ever, like, especially with a character like this, colorful, stylish, most
Mhm.
people aren't going to think, okay, silhouette, but it's like not fully silhouetted. You got the detail there. You can see the detail in the face, which I think is just awesome. The detail in the jacket. Like, how do you come up with this stuff? Like, how does your mind go there to go this way?
Ah, dude, I don't know. I think it's like a lot of, like I said, I think a lot of it has to do with just a passion for people.
Mhm.
I want them to look as cool as I think they are, and that's always my goal. Like I want them to walk away feeling cooler than they've ever felt before because people, I mean, we look up to these people. They do amazing things, and I feel like so often it's just crummy photography for these iconic people, and only a handful will ever get to meet the big time photographers, where you're getting your image taken by somebody who's really iconic, I guess you could say. But these, to me, is like these are iconic stories. These are iconic people. I mean, he told me the story of how he met Tony Hawk over taquitos at the skate park when they were teenagers. You know what I mean? Like, it's awesome.
That
It
is
is
awesome.
awesome. And so to realize the journey he's been on, um, and then to honor that, like I think for me, sometimes I just feel like there's a lot of pressure because I want them to feel really cool. I want them to feel like they have been honored and their story has been heard, and then we can share it out to the world. So, I mean, yeah, for me, a lot of it, I think I'm inspired a lot by cinema and by movies and by art. And like, I love going to museums. I love going to movies. I self-care days for me, that's what that looks like.
Mm.
So things like the Joker, like I brought up Joker because that movie is like one of my most inspirational. I mean, when you look at the lighting, there's scenes in that movie, it's mind
Insane.
numbing.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Blade Runner and when you see the lighting setups and the fact that they even came up with this stuff, I think it's a similar idea. It's really about, and that's one, I guess, big takeaway is that cinema is about doing what you see. And so it's like, I have this idea, let's just think of like Blade Runner, to have somebody walking through a landscape that's super red and there are giant statues and it's just like foggy and gnarly, but we need this crazy soft light. And when you see the rigs that these people build to create a however many second scene that is, I think that's kind of where my mind goes is like, okay, how can we make this as epic as possible? And then I mood board it all out. I go through our story. I make sure we know what we're trying to accomplish, and then I'll just yeah light it based on the look and feel that we're going for and the place we end up being. If it's a house or if it's a studio like this, and kind of just going from there. But in my mind, I see it. And again, I think it's so important, especially for new photographers. I think it's so important to understand that I've seen this way for a long time. I have not been able to photograph this way for my entire career. Like it's been the past, I'd say, for me, probably 5 years where I feel comfortable with like my ideas and knowing that I'll be able to show up. I don't know if I put any of Robbie Madison in there, but that shoot with Robbie, that idea was so big and it took a team of people and we ended up having to get it sponsored by KTM and by um, Fist, which is like a glove company. We were in a cherry picker. I was with my digital tech in a cherry picker with a Minus boom arm, 60 feet in the air, while he was doing a backflip over a 60-foot gap jump in the middle of the night in his front yard. And that I knew it would work. But dude, it was sketch and it was scary. And it was like, if I don't do this, this is really bad. And I think I started with those ideas when I first got into photography, and I would go and then I'd come home and it was like, oh my gosh, this was a huge fail. And at that point, you just need people who are gracious, right? And now I've gotten to the point where I will be able to see it in my head and then I can translate it based on what I've learned and what I know. And I want that to be an encouragement because I think so often, if you see an image like this or you see something that just seems so big and so grand, it is so big and so grand. However, I failed many, many times trying to do things and not being able to. And I think that's so super important for like us older photographers. I'm just older in age. I'm not like more seasoned, but to say like, hey, it's really hard. And I think it's Ira Glass there's that a whole thing about taste. I post it all the time. But it's just the idea that you start out because you have good taste, but what no one tells you is that you're not going to produce good work for a while, and you just got to keep doing it. And that's why for me, personal projects are so important because it's where I hone everything. It's where I fail. It's where I fail that makes me better when I'm with a client, when I'm with somebody who I really want to make sure their images are fantastic. And failing more allows me to create this when the pressure is really on and it really matters.
Wow. Dude, we got one time for one more image. I
Boom,
had one
boom.
in my mind, but I'm gonna flip through these. If there's one that jumps out,
Go.
I was gonna go here.
Just go.
I don't know
Yes.
if there's anything else that
Oh, that
which
one.
one of these? This one?
Dude, I love them both. This
They're
guy
so
is
good, dude.
he is awesome.
I remember you
This is
posting
Peelander
about this.
Yellow. Peelander
Peelander
Yellow.
Yellow.
Yeah.
What's the
Um,
story?
so Peelander Yellow, dude, it's a great story actually because we were visiting not Rudy's. Holy smokes. Oh, now I'm gonna make myself forget the name of it. Goldie's Barbecue. And it's basically in Fort Worth, Texas. Number one, it was rated the number one barbecue place in Texas, which some would argue that that's like the number one barbecue place in the country. And we got up at like 6 a.m. to go to this barbecue place with me and my family to go stand in line for 4 hours to get
Wow,
barbecue. That's me. That's me.
that's
If you want to know about
dedication.
me, that's me right there. Um, anyways, we're standing in line and we finally get up to the front after waiting for 4.5 hours. And on the wall is this crazy like mural of this pig. And I was just like, man, this is some wild stuff. Like, I really like this. So on the bottom, Instagram handle. So I pull it up and I'm like, dude, this guy's crazy. And I see him. I'm like, this guy looks awesome. So I reached out on Instagram. I was like, dude, I was at this place, saw your work. Let's meet. So he's down in Austin, which is like a 2.5 hour drive. And I was like, hey man, I'll come down. I want to sit and see you and meet you and whatever. So I drive down, meet him at his studio, which is this picture. And it's a like attic room in the top level of a screen printing building that is also like a office that is, and he's just like tucked in this little corner doing his thing. But he also, if you go back, this whole Peelander Yellow thing started as a band. And so each character in the band has a color and like a persona that goes with it. And it's this whole choreographed show. So the story goes, he came over from Japan, he moved to New York City, he was doing his art thing, like trying and just struggling. And he said, New York drove me so insane. It was so loud. I wanted to scream. And so I started a band. And so he makes this band and he has like this cult following of people. Like when we posted this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Peelander Yellow, best show I've ever seen in my life." Whatever. And he's so fun and just like the kindest, calmest dude I've ever met, and just has story after story. So, anyways, we talk for like 2 hours, and I'm like, "All right, I'll come back. We'll do a shoot." And we wanted to kind of cover both sides of him, like this artist side of him, but also the music and the craziness of his shows. And uh, yeah, he is actually this is the one I put in, but he has this crazy helmet that he wears, like huge with like arms coming out of it, and yeah, it's so cool. Actually, you can see on the bottom left side of his guitar is like him with his helmet on. See that sticker?
That's awesome.
That's him. So we have other images with that as well. Um, but this guy, I mean, he was just out there, and I'd be like, "Oh, can you jump one more time? Oh, can you jump one more time?" And I mean, he jumped up and down for like 45 minutes. Like it was insane. He was so accommodating. Um, and just like it was so much fun to create this stuff with him. And so this was actually, we had to make a stage because we didn't really have a location. So
My God,
this
that's
is the
great.
picnic area in the back of the office building that he is at. I was like, dude, just put up your stuff. And I'm gonna put a bunch of lights up like it's a concert hall, you know. And I had gels all over everything. We've got giant lights everywhere. And we just kind of like made it work. And we're just in the middle of Austin, Texas, in this wild, it's literally, I had to walk across a bridge that was over a stream. And it's just, we had to move like all the ashtrays out and all the break room stuff out. And um, yeah, it was great, man. It was
That's
such a good
awesome,
time.
dude.
So
Man, I don't
there
want
it
this
is.
to end. It's a lot of great information here, man. It was great to really get inside your mind and see how you see things, why you create. I mean, like I said, we never talk about this when we're in Louisville or the random places we'll meet up. We also
Yeah.
don't talk about Cuban food, apparently. I'm
Dude, next
still
time we're hanging
next
out,
time.
dude, I am
And now
like,
I got a barbecue spot that I got to get down to Texas. Got to get down to Texas.
oh, dude, yeah,
Um,
we've been to like, I think we've been to 8 of the top 50 now. Like it's pretty
oh,
insane. It's a
nice.
wild scene. But
Nice. Well, dude, it was great to connect. I mean, awesome conversation. I'm one of your biggest fans. You're one of my favorite photographers. That comes genuinely. I think your work is just it transcends all the other BS that's out there. And I'm glad we didn't get sucked into the easy social media conversation. But your work just it's so elevated. And I think it's like the perfect example of people that should be in it for the right reasons, for the passion. You're totally passionate about it. You put so much work into it, which me as a lazy photographer, I respect that so much, the amount of effort. Like I'd walk into P Lander Yellow's thing studio, just be like, all right, maybe I could just bounce a flash and we'll call it a day. I think photographers get lazy, man. And this is like this makes me want to go out and take out all the stuff in my kit
yeah.
and just go crazy and see what I can make of it. So it's super inspiring, man. I want to thank you again for joining us.
Dude, thank you. I mean, I appreciate the compliments and yeah, if I inspire anybody to go out and make stuff with people, that's my goal. Like I love that.
Awesome. Well, you got to let me know if your world travels take you anywhere within 5 hours in New York. I drive, so I'll come out and we'll link.
Yes.
We'll get a coffee. Well, you
Yes,
said
I'm down.
coffee's your language. I'm like, coffee's my language too.
Let's go. Well, next time I'm in New York, dude, you gotta show me a good coffee spot then. I'm down.
Starbucks. No, I'm joking.
Oh,
I'm joking. I
sorry.
was gonna say Dunkin' Donuts, but missed opportunity. Dude, we'll link
Oh,
next time you're up here. Let me know.
yeah.
Anybody out there in the audience, just message me a good coffee spot. I probably drink the same right now. I'll have you over to my apartment in the Bronx. We'll get a Bustelo from the Keurig. It'll be great.
Oh, nice. Get
Yeah,
the K cup action.
there we go. A little K-cup action. Well, Aaron, huge thank you to you for joining us, man, and to
Yeah,
all of
thank
our
you.
viewers out there. Thank you guys as well for always tuning in to the B&H Event Space. But that's all we have for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space, now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, brother.